Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll give everybody a moment to come on in, join the webinar. In the meantime, let us know in the chat where you're calling in from this afternoon or morning or wherever you might be in the world. See the numbers ticking up. Many of you have joined. Hello, Toronto. All right. I like it. The first one's from Canada, just like this morning session. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. I think most of you have joined sessions throughout the day, so you've already heard my spiel, but I'll do it again. That's why I'm here. I'm Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners. Really happy to join you today, and very happy that the hosts of this day are all involved. Cathexis Partners, of course, Tatango, Turnkey, Nucleavis, and last but not least, Event 360 is also hosting. These folks all make it possible so that this day can be a free resource for everybody involved. So really appreciate everybody's involvement. Also appreciate the involvement of our media partner, Nonprofit Pro. They're a great partner of ours, and we really appreciate all the communication and emails and information that they share as well. A great resource if you're not already familiar with them, check them out. Right, moving right along. Again, this is the last session of this year's virtual conference, and really glad that you're able to join us. This session is enhancing peer-to-peer experiences to generate funds and build community. That's a lot of words, Jillian. A real-world story from AIDS Healthcare Foundation, but I like it. It's all catchy. If I wasn't on so much cold medication, it probably would have run so much smoother off my tongue. But before we hand it over, I just want to point out we have chat available and also the Q&A. As you're thinking of questions throughout this, just go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and the team will get to them towards the end. So without any further ado, Jillian.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the final session of the day. Hooray. I just wanted to really quickly say thanks for attending the Peer-to-Peer World Conference, and thanks to Mark at Cathexis Partners and all of the other great presenters today. Our session, as Mark mentioned, is called Enhancing Peer-to-Peer Experiences to Generate Funds and Build Community, a real-world story from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And I think it really fits well with some of the other presentations you've heard today. If you've kind of been here from the start this morning and joined for all of the sessions, I think in the first session, Mark and Carrie talked a little bit about how they were presenting some of the peer-to-peer high-level best practices for peer-to-peer programs, and that later in the day, sessions would kind of dig deep and dive into various areas of the participant lifecycle. And so if you think back to those charts from earlier this morning, Max and I today, we're going to do a presentation that sits somewhere down in the kind of flow of things between having an event and recruiting participants, and then getting those participants to go out and get those donations. So when you think about the overall flow of that participant life cycle, our presentation today and the stories that we're going to share are going to focus down in those two key areas. So my name is Jillian Trans, and I am part of the team at Event 360 that for the past 20 years has been planning, promoting, and producing peer-to-peer fundraising events for nonprofits across the country. And my co-presenter today, I'm super excited to introduce Max Alvarez with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. He's the Director of Events and Community Engagement for AHF. Max, good afternoon. Tell everybody hello.
Hello, everyone.
So Max oversees over 100 events a year for AHF, but today we're going to focus on the two signature peer-to-peer fundraising programs AHF has, the Atlanta AIDS Walk and Music Festival and the Florida AIDS Walk and Music Festival. So moving right along. For the last session of the day, like I said, I want to dig into these events, and I've shared some photos here. I'm a visual learner. I love events. And so we've gone ahead and shared some photos from the Atlanta event and the Florida event. And we want to kind of take you through how this legacy program has evolved over the past decade and a half while continuing to grow and focus on community. So, the presentation today is going to have kind of two areas. The first is going to focus on big strategic ideas like the fundraising teams model and how you can think about reimagining or reinventing that, and then some smaller, more tactical tool-based ideas to get really specific about how these programs engage and motivate their event community. And at the end of the day, the purpose of this session is to leave you feeling a little bit inspired, thinking about ways that you might be able to tweak or adjust your event model, your event experience, or your team's program as you look to 2024. We were just saying, Max, it's the end of the year. I know everybody's like feeling that final rush, and before you know it, strategic planning for next year is going to be underway. So we hope to give you guys some great ideas. Before I dive in to those areas I talked about, in case you're not familiar with AHF and the two signature peer-to-peer programs they have, I wanted to provide a little bit of history about the event. So Max, our team at Event 360 has been a partner of AHF for a long time. Before we dig in, can you tell us a little bit about your role as the director of events for the AIDS Healthcare Foundation?
Of course, and thank you, Jillian. Here at AHF, my role to focus on expanding our brand and awareness on all the resources that are available, not just through AHF, but also through other community partners like we do for Florida and Atlanta AIDS Walk.
That's great. And so I was hoping that you might also share a little bit about when we look at the Florida AIDS Walk and Music Festival and Atlanta AIDS Walk, talk a little bit about how that event experience went from a walk in the park, which you see here on the left, which was already raising an impressive $450,000 back in 2010, to this brand new experience of the Florida AIDS Walk and Music Festival, which raised over $2 million in 2023. What has that evolution meant for your team?
So our mission is cutting edge advocacy and care, regardless of your ability to pay. So the advocacy component really sits on my department, really playing on with how do we expand our advocacy efforts and really kind of get the message across. And that was a task that we've really taken on very serious, right? Because there's so many misinformation. So the best way for us to do it is to really generate a more fun and learning environment for people. No one really wants to be told about what they should be doing, and it's a tricky component to really make it fun and engaging, and then all of a sudden you realize you've been kind of educated on some stuff you needing to do in order to maintain a good health and wellness, personally. So that's kind of like where we really focus on both walks, right? The walk in the park is really close to people's heart. People are coming out to support because they believe in it. They might have had someone they've lost. But then how do we really engage others that are not connected directly? Because this is a very broad message that we want to make sure everyone hears about it. And that's where the fun part is. So you can see in the current slide, you see before it was a very simple walk, whereas now it looks a little bit more engaging, more fun. We kind of added more splash of colors to really tie in the beach setting. This is the Florida AIDS Walk, and it takes place in the Fort Lauderdale Beach, South Park. So as you can see, the moment you come in, you are embraced with happy colors, activities for people to come do, all advocacy driven, with a learning twist to it. So I think that shift kind of started to attract more of the general population. Because at first we really did have people that were like, but this is AIDS Walk, like, what is this? And we've kind of seen that boom of participation, not just from our local partners and people that are directly tied into AIDS and HIV, but also to the general population that want to come and just have a good day and learn.
Well, and I think Max, for me, that was one of the biggest pieces of your vision that I think was so much fun for our team to execute was you like to do fun events. I think that's
Yeah,
something that AHF really excels at. And I think to your point, some of those activities, I think about things like the food trucks and, the dunking of the different
yeah,
participants, the dunk tank, the games that are on the beach, the VIP area with the shade and the beverages. I think you guys have gone really above and beyond to focus on those little things that are going to your point, attract people who maybe need to hear the message, but
hmm,
maybe wouldn't feel inclined to sign up for just a 5K walk to benefit HIV/AIDS.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, you're a little picky about events, right? You like a fun time.
I mean, we like to expand, not just focus on one. So yes.
Excellent. So now that we kind of have a lay of the land in terms of where this event started, how the experience shifted, and what that's meant for AHF, I wanted to dig into that first bucket of information I talked about, which is, the overarching peer-to-peer model. So, like with any peer-to-peer walk run, for the events that we're talking about today, participants can register as individuals, teams, and either a team captain or a team member, right? And most peer-to-peer programs, see that teams outperform fundraising compared to just standalone individuals. And I think, a session earlier today talked about that's because of the community of those teams, right? That's never really been a surprise to us. We see how those teams compete against one another and really try to raise as much money as possible. And they're bringing friends and family with them. And that just kind of adds to the momentum and excitement. But we want to talk a little bit about a specific type of team that AHF has created called the beneficiary teams. And before I get into that, I wanted to just quickly take a poll of folks on the webinar today, just to understand if everybody is using a traditional teams fundraising model or if you have a grant to your beneficiary program. So when you think about your peer-to-peer fundraising event, are the funds that the teams raised going directly to your organization, which is the standard, or do you currently have a model where teams and smaller organizations in the community can register and keep a portion of the funds, or you match dollar for dollar or a portion of what they raise? Oh my gosh, guys, thanks so much for participating. We've got about 50% of folks having answered. I'm just going to give it another minute here. All right, it looks like the responses are slowing down. So, I'm not really, so there we go, share results. So we've got about 4% of our attendees who responded saying that you do have smaller organizations register and, involved in some sort of revenue match or sharing program, and 96% the peer-to-peer programs keep all the funds raised. So that's helpful for me. It's a level setting exercise, Max. I think, that's kind of what we expected. So we can move on to the next slide. Can she move on to the next slide, folks? We'll see. Oh, there we go. So before we take a look at the beneficiary teams program on the AIDS Walk Atlanta and Florida AIDS Walk, I kind of wanted to start by looking at the traditional peer-to-peer teams fundraising model. So our team at Event 360 has probably written a dozen blogs over the past years about team fundraising and using competition to motivate your fundraising teams on event, right? We know that if you can activate your teams, that's where your bang for your buck is going to come in. So when we think about that program, when I think about a traditional teams program, the things that come to mind are, mostly corporate or family and friend teams registering, and then all of your teams are competing to see who can raise the most. You're generally, a top teams program. At the peer-to-peer forum conference back in February, for those of you who were there, I think you remember, they shared some interesting data where the assumption had always been that corporate teams were the highest performing kind of category of teams. But when they broke down the data, they found that actually corporate teams and family and family and fundraising. Family and friend teams were kind of neck and neck in terms of performance on a traditional run walk program. And so I know that was really interesting, and it kind of highlights the point that it's not necessarily the type of team, but just the fact that they're in it together and fundraising together that makes them a success. With the traditional peer-to-peer program, and I think our poll just kind of alluded to this as well, the funds benefit the organization, right? So if I register for an event, my family and I register, form a team, the money that we're raising is going to the mission of the nonprofit hosting the event. And then finally, with a traditional peer-to-peer teams program, teams are encouraged to register, recruit their team members, and then rally together on event day, often with those top performing teams being rewarded. And so for us, a lot of times that looks like special spaces at the event. For the top fundraising teams, where they either get their own tent or they get a special breakfast, something that the other participants can kind of see and be like, ooh, I want that. They get a wearable maybe as a team, something that, you know, their team hit a milestone, so they all get a wristband or something that signifies that they put in that extra effort. Or they get, you know, a top team party post event. You know, these are all sorts of the traditional peer-to-peer fundraising teams best practices that I think a lot of us are familiar with. But now I want to look at the beneficiary teams model. So I think this is a really unique and exciting model that we want to share with you as kind of something to think about, something to inspire you, something to maybe get you excited for something you could potentially pilot on your own peer-to-peer program. So Max, can you talk a little bit about the Community Partner Program and the role that it plays for Florida AIDS Walk and AIDS Walk Atlanta?
Of course. So when we're looking at beneficiaries, we look at how do they partner with us, right? So like, is their mission aligned with our mission? Do they provide similar services as we do, or even more services than we do? And then a lot of times we also look at starter not-for-profits that are really trying to kick off their business and really kind of head set, and they might have very like limited resources and stuff. So we like to partner up with them, highlight them, let the community know that they're local, and that they're there to serve as well as we are. And we really kind of try to build the brother sibling relationship with them, to really kind of bring front. It takes a village. We all know this. And at the end of the day, our mission is to eradicate HIV/AIDS. So the more that people know that it's available to them, whether it's closer to their home, whether they know somebody that works there, it becomes easier for people to be more receptive to the message as well as to staying in care. So it's really studying your area where your event is taking place and how the community will be benefiting from it. You know what I mean? Again, focusing very much on the advocacy aspect of it and the resource that is available to the community so that they know that is there for them.
That's great. And so just to kind of restate or recap a little bit about the program for the folks on the webinar, you know, I think the beneficiary teams program, and I'll use Florida as an example, you know, some of the things that really set it apart from a traditional program I've outlined here. So it's a big focus on collaboration, which I think you heard Max talk about, rather than competition. There's an application process, right? Not every small nonprofit in South Florida that's providing services to the HIV/AIDS community gets to register and automatically be a beneficiary team, right? So there's a selection process, like Max said, where they're looking for some synergies between the two organizations. Maybe they're looking for an organization that really needs the funds because they're small and just getting started. So they go through that application process, and 10 to 12 local organizations are selected and then get to register as a team for the walk. And then on this event, their funds that they raise as a team are matched by AHF, right? So I think that revenue matching is a part of the secret sauce. And you're like, well, obviously, of course, they're going to raise more money if they get to keep it, but that's a good thing. And I think that's what we're talking about when we say collaboration, not competition, right? The folks in the community who are living at risk for HIV/AIDS are seeking services from these local organizations. And so by sharing the wealth and funding them, the patients that AHF is most, focused on are also receiving services, and it's kind of that wraparound effect for the community. The other thing that I wanted to mention is they get additional benefits to the teams, because AHF has this event structure. And so, I know we heard earlier today that events, are a moment, right? They're not forever. But what I think is really great about a moment is it gives a community of people an opportunity to come together and have this shared experience. And it gives them a reason to ask for money. But not every local nonprofit in South Florida who's serving this community can afford, a peer-to-peer website platform. They can't afford to throw this event. And so by having the beneficiary teams program, these select teams are able to piggyback off of this incredible event that AHF is throwing. But AHF gets the benefit of bringing more folks into the fold, right? And so I think that kind of collaboration is really a win-win, in terms of this model. And I really like the idea of, organizations getting, to benefit from these funds if maybe they don't have the way to do it. But AHF is really getting to amplify the exposure that you see from these events. And as I think about the national nonprofits that we're working with across the industry, so many have gone virtual and may no longer have these community footprints in all of these markets across the country. And so you kind of have to work with the folks who are boots on the ground, right? You've got to work together to serve your community, whether it's a cancer or a healthcare or, whatever your cause may be. We're stronger together. And so I really like this collaborative model. Max, talk a little bit about the sponsorship potential with this as well, because I know that's something that you talk a lot about with AHF.
Well, just to kind of solidify what you said, we cannot forget about the moments because moments ignite actions and action keeps us going, right? As a not-for-profit employee, we're driven by passion. It's literally what we do, and passion generates and creates magic. So you cannot forget about those moments. That's why we also focus on the moment being fun, being memorable, and really making it a community effort. Because when we roll into the sponsorship potential, right? Sponsors want to see an event that is full of people because what they're interested in is to see how many bodies are going to see their brand. And by generating that partnership, we're able to kind of pull in audiences that we would have not had a reach, we would have never had spoken to. So there is a huge benefit on having beneficiaries be part of your event. It becomes more lucrative to sponsors, and that's really what it ties in, right? The more people you have, the more people that speak about your event, the more that people are looking forward to being part of your event, whether it is because it facilitates them raising more funds, because it's a moment in time that they actually get to be part of something that they've always wanted to be part of, or provide the assistant or volunteer in something that they're passionate about. So when it comes to the sponsors, if you focus on that moment, the sponsors will come because they want to be part of that moment because you will always remember. And again, it'll ignite action. So don't put the moment on the side. Let it be what spearheads your movement.
I love that. I think there might be folks maybe in the webinar who are like, what do I even do? Like, this model may not be right for all organizations, right? We could just talk about the Teams program all day long, but we wanted to share kind of like this interesting new approach to it in hopes that maybe you will be inspired. So I think one of the things that comes to my mind is, using this to generate more revenue. A team that maybe raised $2,000 on their own, who's suddenly a beneficiary team, might raise $10,000 because, you know, they're excited about seeing some of those funds. And even if you were to, like, not necessarily match dollar for dollar, but share some of that revenue, you're still, as an organization and as the event host, coming out ahead of where you would be because they've got skin in the game. So Max, what might you say to an organization who's like, there's no way we can do this? Like 10 beneficiary teams, we have to pick 10 out of all of these applications. Like, could they do one or two? Could you pilot this in a smaller way? Like, could they split funds? Maybe the teams keep 50% and the event keeps 50%. What would you say to an organization who's looking at the slide and is like, there's no way I can pull this off?
I mean, it kind of goes back into the moment, right? You generate the moment as large as you want it to be. So we should not get stuck on a specific number. If this is just a two partner situation, then let's make it a two partner situation and kind of see how you both will be able to benefit the community from the event. Never forgetting that the community is the main focal point, right? Because we are doing this for the community. So it's really, what are we going to do for them? Like, what is it something that will attract the community to come out and support us? And don't get stuck on the number. I mean, as simple as one beneficiary will do much better if it's just you by yourself.
Yeah.
And whether you decide to split 50-50 or match dollar for dollar, or even just have them as a partner, right? Marketing is extremely expensive, and having two mouths distribute the message and trying to go out and get more people to attend, it reaches a lot further than just one mouth. So in that aspect of it, just really look at that partnership on ways to really expand the communication that your event is happening, that it's a cause that is dear to your heart, and that it's a community effort. Everybody wants to be part of a group doing good. So don't think big, but also think small, right? Start baby steps.
Baby steps, I like it. Awesome. So now that we've talked a little bit, and I see that there are some questions coming in, and we will save time at the end, guys. So don't worry, keep dropping your questions in as they come up, and we will come back to them for sure. But now that we talked about the big strategic consideration, the model, the team's model overall, we want to talk a little bit about how our team uses specific tactics and tools to engage the team's community for both Florida AIDS Walk and the Atlanta AIDS Walk and Music Festival. I'm going to tackle this in three parts, so kind of three buckets of tactics that our team uses to really engage these folks. I'm going to start with focused workshops. And this applies to beneficiary teams, but it obviously also applies to your traditional teams program as well. But the first thing I want to say about focused workshops is that we've had success with both virtual and in person. And Max, I think you did a really good job of raising this point when we were talking through this. Like, you have to know your audience and what's going to work for them. So you might have to test out virtual versus in person, see where your attendance is better, and then pick the path that's right for you. But one of the things that we find, especially with the beneficiary teams, is they're going to have questions, right? When you form this partnership, there's a little bit of back and forth. There's some questions that they have. We use that to direct them to the workshops. And the reason we do that is, one, to obviously drive attendance, but two, if they've got that question as a beneficiary team, chances are somebody else has that question. And we can talk at them all day long, but what's better than them talking to each other, right? And so it's kind of like a kill two birds with one stone, but also deepen those cross connections as they're part of that same collaborative model. You know, programs and details get lost in email. I think every presenter today has talked about how no one reads their email. I feel like we've heard a lot about that. Texting is the new email, you know. You got to meet people where they're at. And so how many peer-to-peer professionals are like getting questions that you're like, but I put that in the email, read your email. The nice thing about these focused workshops is that all of that stuff you're trying to tell your team captains or your team members, you can use to form the agenda for any given workshop. And so we put an example in here from one of our workshop agendas that I believe was like 6 or 8 weeks out, where we started with the big announcements at the top, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them the exciting things. And then we went right into promos because, you know, we'd emailed everybody about the promos, but if they're not moving along, if the promo deadline is coming up and you're not seeing the traction that you want, talking with them about registration and team recruitment promotions or fundraising promotions is a great agenda item, because then they'll get really jazzed about it and hopefully take action. Free money. This was an agenda item when we wanted everybody to come to this workshop to hear about the matching gifts program that we were enhancing. And so, I mean, what's more exciting on an agenda than free money? I would turn up for that. Facebook groups. So as we're like launching Facebook groups, or every year when we're kicking off the group for that year's event, you know, Facebook groups are a great way to engage people. And so we'll put that on the agenda to talk them through it. And then Q&A, of course. But again, this is just a sample agenda. You know what messages you're pushing out to your peer-to-peer event audience. I mean, leading up to the event information might be on the agenda. There's all sorts of things you can include. But finally, determining the cadence of meetings that make sense for your program, and then always recording them. So for a program like Florida AIDS Walk, for example, that's a legacy program, every other month might be sufficient. If you're starting out with these kinds of workshops and testing them, you might want to mix it up. Maybe have one every quarter, maybe have one, you know, every other week. Like, you have to kind of test out what's going to work for you and your organization based on the messaging you want to deliver.
If I add,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to do it in person, right? Being virtual is such an advantage because it gives us such a wide range of reach, time. It's convenient, but at the end of the day, we are humans and we loved human touch, human contact. And when others see the effort that you're putting, effort is so contagious. They'll want to put the effort as well. You might have some people show up, you might not have some people show up, but then the people that show up and they have so much fun with you and generate that moment with them, they will speak to the others. And then all of a sudden you have people wanting to be more engaging with you through your virtual meeting workshops or your in-person one.
That's a great point. Oh, it's so good to be able to be back in person.
Did I?
When it comes to beneficiary teams and just teams in general, we wanted to obviously talk about one of the biggest tools in our toolbox is matching gifts. Some of you may already have a matching gifts program. If you're new to the space, you might be like, what is a matching gift? So matching gifts are employers that will match a certain percentage or one-to-one for any contributions made by their employees. You can see kind of a screenshot of our matching gift portal here on the right that we introduced to the Florida AIDS Walk website in 2022. And beneficiary teams, because they have skin in the game, right? Because they're getting that match dollar for dollar, we're most likely to utilize your matching gift program. And so I think this is something that, whether you're talking about free money or some sort of contest for the number of matching gifts, like, this is something you should be pushing, because once people hear about it, they really, really go after their friends and family members who they know can qualify for a matching gift. And then practice makes perfect. So one of my favorite things that one of our field coordinators did at a workshop was, when introducing this program, like, pulled out his phone and demonstrated live to people the value of this program and the fact that they can, you know, log into social media, search for a company that they, as the registered participant, already knows matches, right? So they can go into the matching gift tool, search companies that match, then cross-reference that against their Facebook friends and see who works there, right? Because that's a much more compelling ask when you go to, like, your Facebook friend who's like some person you knew in college, right? Like, you've got to have a warm lead, and to be able to say, hey, I see you're working at this company now. They match dollar for dollar if you donate to this event that I'm doing. Like, what a great warm way to send that email or that Facebook message. And so I think just the value of being able to touch and show, and like show and tell, as our like little kids do, right? Being able to demonstrate how easy that is, and giving folks really no excuse, no barrier to entry to go ahead and utilize the tool. Perfect. So the last kind of thing on the list for tools and tactics are facilitated connections. So what I mean by facilitated connections is like the opportunity to bring these folks together in a real way, these members of the same event community, and encourage that cross communication so they feel more invested in the event that you're having. Some of you may be doing some of these already, but I know that this is what part of the secret sauce is for the Florida AIDS Walk and Music Festival, as well as the AIDS Walk Atlanta 5K Music Festival. Like, having a Facebook group where folks can talk to each other with each other, right? Rather than us talking at them. 30% of our participants are in a dedicated Facebook group for their respective event. And the best fundraising ideas, guys, don't even come from us, right, Max? I mean, I think they're seeing photos of what other people are doing to raise their fundraising, and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to copy that. They're seeing the outfits that they're going to wear to the event, which get incredibly creative, and it just gets them inspired. And so I think Facebook groups have been a really great engagement tool, and that engagement, right, creates momentum. It creates more fundraising dollars, more excitement. The solo walker program. So if you're not already reaching out to your walkers who haven't joined a team, it's a great thing to maybe test out and add to the mix. This might be a great A/B test over text or email for you for 2024. Reaching out and saying, hey, we saw you haven't, you're registered as an individual. Would you like to join a team? Would you like to walk as an individual? And we can't wait to see you. Or here's a little bit about our beneficiary teams. These are teams that are organizations in your community. Here's a little bit about what they do. Would you like to join one of them? We can connect you. Like, what a great opportunity, right? Max was saying that as part of the application process, the beneficiaries have to provide a little bit of a blurb about their mission and what they're doing in the community with the funds raised. And so I think for the solo walkers, it's kind of like, ooh, look at all these teams. I want my money to go there. You know, and again, it's collaboration. It's not competition. We want them to be on a beneficiary team because not only are they more likely to raise more, they're more likely to come back year over year. So that is a win-win for AHF. And then finally, social offerings. I used a photo of the lip sync battle here because I think it's probably one of my favorites. But Max, I know there's some others, but I just think that these social offerings leading up to the event that serve as both like fundraisers for those teams, but also kind of like community engagement are such a unique and special touch for kind of the communities that you've created in Florida and Atlanta.
100%. I would say don't be afraid to connect with your community, right? Because the best ideas come from other people. And with the lip sync battle, it's been a very interesting learning curve because we go out there, we kind of reach out to community businesses, and then they actually are very willing to support the cause. Most of our partners with bars and clubs that are available, that have a stage or whatever your activity is going to be, they're more than willing to provide the space free of charge. It's a matter of just asking. You will get some yes and you will get some no's. But they provide the space for you free of charge. And then the community itself put this event together. So for our lip sync battle, we really partner with the beneficiaries and other community members, and they put performances, they sing, they lip sync, they do magic shows, they do all sorts of things, and people donate. We are obviously promoting the teams while we're doing the lip sync battle. We generate a QR code to make it very convenient for people. You don't have to pull out your credit card. You don't have to pull out anything. A QR code linked to that team. They automatically donate towards those teams. And while people are having fun, again, generating that moment and really getting educated and supporting without even knowing it, people get very involved. And we've had an amazing turnout for our lip sync battle, so much that even our beneficiaries are like, hey, can we take the lead on this? I'm like, 100%. One less thing for me to have to organize. And it becomes such a marketing tool, not just for fundraising, but also to promote your event. Because it is an opportunity for them to get educated in regards to these beneficiaries that are part. You as the producer that is putting this together and what the overall goal and objective is for the event, which is obviously, like I said previously, I'm becoming a broken record. It's to serve our community, right? These are services and resources that is readily available to our community. And here we are. Help us support it. Help us keep these open for you to use. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I think one of the things I love about this too, when you think about a national nonprofit model who may not have a footprint in every market, you get the added benefit of leveraging the beneficiaries' relationship with local businesses to promote not only the event, but I know some of them then turn around and they want to make a donation or they want to do a small sponsorship, because they didn't know about the event perhaps, and now they're really invested. And so I think there is, again, that collaboration is good for both the beneficiary teams as well as, AHF as an overarching organization. So all good things, win-win. Okay, guys, so we talked about the big bucket, rethinking your team's model, maybe considering piloting a beneficiary program in 2024. And then we talked about some of the tools and tactics that we use to really engage and motivate those teams and create that sense of community. That's really it for Max and I today. So put your questions in the chat. We want to leave you with some key takeaways. First of all, sharing is caring. I think when you are so focused on the numbers and the dollars, sometimes you think you have to meet your goals, you have to be the biggest and the best, but I think this collaborative model really demonstrates that everybody can win when we work together, small organizations and large. And, it may not be the model for you, but it's just something that I think AHF has demonstrated really well through their 2 signature peer-to-peer programs. My field coordinator would strangle me if I didn't say that there are no new tricks in fundraising. That's his mantra. Like, he will talk about tools and tricks and tips and fundraising ideas all day long, and then he always ends with, but there are no new tricks in fundraising, right? It's all about the ask. You just have to ask. And I think we heard that this morning on the first session. I'm going to close with it on the last session. It's all about the ask. Start small. Consider a pilot. Take it out for a spin. Maybe don't feel like, oh, I have to do a fully baked program with 10 local community organizations or grantees, and this application process is going to be super cumbersome and we have to match dollar for dollar. No, start small. Take it step by step, baby steps, like Max said, and get rid of your all or nothing attitude. And I will raise my hand and say that I am always guilty of this one. If it can't be perfect, I don't want it. But we really have to work as peer-to-peer event fundraising professionals to lean into that gray area and try not to get discouraged, right? Try not to have that all or nothing thinking. And then finally, if we leave you with one thing, we hope that we shared enough about the beneficiary program AHF has to maybe entice you to consider piloting one in 2024 or beyond. Starting now, planting the seed. We'd love to hear from you, next year and see, did anybody try it out? What were your results? Did those teams come back and raise even more money because they had a revenue share? Max, what did I forget? What do you got?
Just 2 things, and you didn't forget. I just want to make sure everybody gets it. Community, community, community. We can't do this without our community. So always think community, get them engaged, and don't be afraid of no. Try to see no as a not yet. This moment might not be the moment that they'll donate, but they will eventually donate. So be positive.
Excellent. Mark, what do we have in the Q&A? What do we got in the chat?
You were so thorough. I think everybody's just been listening, but there was one question. I think it was asked earlier on, and I think you might have covered, but just to make sure, let's circle back. Who is actually doing the matching was a question that came in.
Sure. So with the matching gift program that I talked about, what the matching gift tool on the Florida AIDS Walk website does is identify employers like Menards, Lowe's, Apple. I'm making those up, by the way. Please don't quote me. That when an employee of that company makes a $50 donation to a nonprofit, that company will match their employee's donation. So the way that I like to think about it is I go out and I'm participating in the Florida AIDS Walk, and I say, Mark, will you donate to me? And Mark says, absolutely. And then I look up Mark's company, and they are in the matching gift search tool, right? So I see that Mark's company will match 50 cents on the dollar or dollar for dollar the donation he made. And then we have a whole program on the site where folks can apply to get those funds matched and credited towards their fundraising goal. So the matching from the company to the donor to the team is done by the company. When we're talking about AHF matching dollar for dollar the beneficiary team's fundraising, that's AHF as the organization saying, okay, say, I'm using that as an example, in South Florida, your team as a beneficiary team raised $10,000. AHF is going to also write you a check for $10,000. Does that help?
They got it. Let's see. How do you make sure all beneficiaries feel equally celebrated and included in the event, both beforehand and on the event?
Well, I think keeping the number small and consistent and manageable is important. I think if every team had the opportunity to do this, it would get unruly very quickly. But I think having 10 teams, it's doable from a recognition perspective. They all get the same thing. They all qualify for the same on-event benefits, the same signage, the same perks. And so I know that's one way. Max, can you think of any other ways that you guys kind of ensure one-to-one that every beneficiary team feels appreciated in that way?
So the workshops are a very key driver to make sure everyone is receiving the same information, everyone is signing up to receive the same. So in our workshops, we mentioned earlier, we talk about promotional, right? So like, what are you needing? So if this person needs palm cards, we're gonna do palm cards for everyone. We try to really make sure that everyone is receiving equally. And then we also generate a VIP event for our beneficiary as well as for top fundraisers. So that would be like a team captain or largest team and stuff, and really people that put the effort to exceed in your fundraising event. And it's not nothing crazy. It'll maybe some food, maybe some awards, just really valuing the time they put in it. Fundraising is a very hard task, we all know, but it's needed. And there's no reason why we can't celebrate. It doesn't have to be a big splash. That's what the big music festival is. But really taking the time to acknowledging the work of those that have really put the effort forward goes a long way.
I'll say there's a flip side to that too, which is that I think Max and then our field team do a really great job of laying out the expectations for beneficiary teams up front. So Max talked about that sibling relationship. I think of it as like little brother, big sister, probably because I'm the big sister to my little brother, but I'm like, yes, the beneficiary team, they get the palm cards, they get the handouts, they get all of the support, they get the VIP, everything. But slash and our field coordinator has a beneficiary Excel report card, which has 8 different action items that they are expected to complete. So did you send out that email? Did you recruit at least X number of people? Did you update your team's fundraising page? And so that gives our team working with the beneficiary teams the tools to look at that and say, okay, we are 6 weeks out and you've only completed 4 of the 8 things that we've asked you to do. What support can we give you? And so not every team, like, yes, we can recognize them all equally, but how much support they need is kind of up to them, because we want them to take very specific actions leading up to the event. And experienced teams who are really jazzed and know exactly what to do may complete all of them 4 weeks before the event even happens, while others we've got to kind of stay on top of. So as much as we like to treat them all equally, sometimes you got to meet the teams where they are.
I like it. Well said. And can you say more about what a grantee program is or what you mean by that?
So I said beneficiary teams. I know some organizations in the industry have grantee programs. So you can register as a corporate team, a friends and family team, a grantee team. And so I was kind of using those to be a little more inclusive in my language. For Florida AIDS Walk and Atlanta AIDS Walk, we call them beneficiary teams. And those are folks who have specifically registered as that team category, who went through the application process and were selected as one of the 10 or 12 teams who then received the matching. And so if you already have in your drop down, whether it's on your team raiser or your donor drive or whatever, a designation for a community organization or grantee, maybe that's a great place to start when you go to pilot this. Reach out to those folks who have already expressed an interest in being part of your event, so that their smaller organization providing support on the ground to the same audience that you're trying to reach have this opportunity to level up the type of team participation that they have.
Right. Well, I think that's the end of the question. So, Max and Jillian, thank you so much for all the insight, all the great info. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And yeah, I guess that wraps another season of peer-to-peer virtual conference. So, thanks everybody for attending. Thanks for playing.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jill.
Alrighty, bye-bye.